Twitter shares see their largest single-day drop in 4 years as their user base shrinks, while Donald Trump accuses the platform of silencing Republicans. Online giants such as Uber and Spotify continue to lose money despite their soaring stock valuations, and we look at how this puts their workers at risk. Doubts are raised about the use of facial recognition by US police after a widely used tool matches members of Congress to criminal mugshots. And 3 Palestinians die after being shot by Israeli soldiers on the Gaza border. A journalist working with RT was caught up in the turmoil.
Oh my God! We just woke up from inhaling and suffocating tear gas.
Thank you for watching the news here at RT International, broadcasting live from Moscow. I'm Kate Partridge. Twitter shares plunged on Friday after the tech giant admitted some bad news. Stocks lost 21%, wiping $6 billion off the company's value. It was the biggest single-day decline since 2014 and came after Twitter admitted its user base has shrunk by 1 million amid a purge of fake accounts. Well, meanwhile, President Trump claims the service is restricting the visibility of prominent Republicans in search results. The practice is known as shadow banning. Trump called it discriminatory and suggested it may be illegal, but Twitter denies any political bias.
Our behavioural ranking doesn't make judgments based on political views or the substance of tweets. We are aware that some accounts are not automatically populating in our search box and shipping a change to address this.
New media oligarchs, I believe they are exploiting their position. Zuckerberg and indeed Twitter always maintain they are not publishers like a newspaper, they are just a tech platform. Well, if they're just a tech platform, they must allow all views as long as they don't break the law of the country that they're in. Their excuse is, oh, well, you can still see this stuff of this person you follow if you go to their profile. Well, that's a bit like the postman. So you're waiting for a letter, it doesn't come, and you have to keep going down the post office to say, you got any post for me today? It's frankly ludicrous. What they're doing at the moment is wrong. It should be a great platform for political discussion. They're using it for political ends.
And Twitter isn't the only corporate giant facing questions. Tesla, Uber and Spotify are posting huge losses. RT's Daniel Bushell looks into the story.
Wall Street's soaring around all-time peaks, and driving that growth locomotive are these guys. Cool corporations like Uber, Tesla, Spotify and Dropbox are investor darlings, convincing even the general public who use their everyday products to buy in. Hurrah!
Big picture, Spotify is the leader in streaming music.
They say sometimes the most successful American tech company.
Just one tiny problem. These firms are losing horrific money. Tesla's worth more than car colossuses Ford or General Motors, despite selling a tiny fraction of the cars and losing billions. Music streaming giant Spotify has just announced vast losses. Uber's now the biggest startup in the world, but it's lost money every year of its life. And last year, the worst, an eye-watering $4.5 billion. The hope is one fine day we'll all book Uber rides in Tesla electric cars while uploading Spotify music to the Dropbox cloud, or something like that. But new economy, new danger. These aren't small companies anymore. They affect millions of workers and users. And cracks are beginning to show, suggesting far from expanding, some are starting to fire their workforce. And in the new economy, relationships are, shall we say, complicated. Hundreds of thousands have paid for Tesla cars the poor company hasn't even built. If it goes bust, these ordinary people would likely be, quote, wiped out.
Definitely, there's a bubble, not just in tech stocks, but in the general stock market itself in the U.S. We're already seeing companies like General Electric and Caterpillar and some of the others, Wells Fargo, in financial stress. There are signs of financial fragility, as I call it, where financial fragility is really a condition where the cash flow to finance previous debt becomes insufficient, and they can't roll over the debt, and they can't borrow the debt, so then they have to default or sell off some of their assets first, their better assets, and then they default if they can't sell off those assets. Well, that financial fragility, in my book, Systemic Fragility in the Global Economy, is an indicator of pending financial instability. And I think we're approaching that, and we may see that emerge in the next year or two.
The UK has suspended cooperation with the US in the trial of two former British citizens who joined Islamic State. Known as the jihadi Beatles due to their accents, the pair were caught in Syria and could now face the death penalty in America. Britain had intended to share intelligence to help the prosecution. However, London decided to take a short-term pause after outrage in Britain over the possible execution. The UK abolished capital punishment for treason in 1998. Lawmakers, rights groups and a family member of one of the suspects all appealed to the government. RT's Polly Boyko takes a closer look at the case.
Political values, human rights, taking a stand are, in case you missed it, quite frankly, a bit of a pain when you want some bloodthirsty terrorists taken care of. The ISIS Beatles, not called that because most of them are dead and one is a terrible drummer, but because they carried out heinous acts of terroristic gruesomeness while speaking with a British accent. Whoever came up with that title has unfortunately made them sound a little too cuddly for a gang of murderous beheaders. Well, two of them have been captured by the US, which really wants to extradite them home and deliver some humane justice, if you know what I mean. All America needs is a bit of evidence to be sent over from Britain, which is a real shame because the UK is a country of conviction, political values, and it does not condone the possible use of the death penalty in any situation. There was outrage. How could Britain stoop so low and put even the lives of those butcherous Beatles at risk? They had already rescinded their British passports. My God, isn't that punishment enough? What to do? Is there any way of taking care of the likes of the ISIS Beatles while at the same time keeping your values intact? Well, luckily, there are a few options. Target the bad guys with anonymous drones while they're still in a sandy country. That's different. Torture is always tricky, but if one of your intelligence agents happens to be standing at the back of the room while someone else from one of those developing nations happens to be pulling out the fingernails, well, that's different. And arming steely-eyed freedom fighters with a picture of bin Laden in their wallets to do some killing, that's different. Sending terrorists to stand trial in a real court before a possible death sentence, well, that just looks bad.
The American Civil Liberties Union has raised the alarm over the use of Amazon's facial recognition tool by police. That's after they falsely matched photos of members of Congress with criminals.
An identification, whether accurate or not, could cost people their freedom or even their lives. Congress must take these threats seriously, hit the brakes and enact a moratorium on law enforcement use of face recognition.
Well, the Civil Liberty Group compared photos of all members of Congress with a database of mugshots. Amazon's facial recognition tool made 28 matches, all of them false. 11 of the mismatches involved people of colour, prompting additional concern. The union claims the tool has an inbuilt racial bias, with 40% of the mistakes involving non-white people. That's despite the fact Congress, which formed the test group, is overwhelmingly white. Technology analyst Roger Kay, though, says the racial aspect has been exaggerated.
when the software is trained to recognize faces, it has to train on a corpus, and the corpus is made up of lots of images of people. And if for whatever reason the images are mainly Caucasian people, then it will be better at recognizing them than at some of the minorities if they weren't well represented in the training samples. But if you're just grabbing any images that you find, then many of them will be dark enough so that people who have darker skin tones may just may be harder to see. It should be understood that facial recognition is not a matter of taking a photograph and sort of comparing it to another photograph and saying, yeah, this one looks like that one. That's what a human would do. What a computer does is that it measures points.
Well, despite widespread doubts about the technology, Amazon has been intensively promoting its use in police departments.
The next, of course, common use case, as you could expect, is public safety.
Amazon is already working with government agencies to deploy this technology. At the ACLU, we obtained records that show that Amazon signed a secrecy agreement with one county to keep details about the technology out of public view. They've also invited law enforcement to suggest new features, and they offered free consulting to help the city of Orlando build its own system.
But Amazon has hit back at the union's test, saying it had used lower accuracy settings than recommended.
While 80% confidence is an acceptable threshold for photos of hot dogs, chairs, animals, or other social media use cases, it wouldn't be appropriate for identifying individuals with a reasonable level of certainty. When using facial recognition for law enforcement activities, we guide customers to set a threshold of at least 95% or higher.
From Amazon's point of view, what they said was that they train their law enforcement clients not to use the software for making decisions, but rather to narrow down the pool to where a human can look at the final results and verify, yes, these do make sense, these are the same people, or they're not the same people. Amazon is saying, well, we think it's quite helpful. We can find lost children and we can find criminals and things, and that's all very positive. But then the ACLU is saying, yes, but you also may use it as a way to sweep up people. There's a possibility of abuse of the technology, and there's also the use of it for good.
3 Palestinians have been killed and 80 injured after Friday's clashes on the Israel-Gaza border. One of the victims was a teenage boy, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. A journalist working with RT, Hind Khudri, was in the midst of the unrest.
So this is the tear gas drone that fires tear gas. Oh my We just woke up from inhaling and suffocating tear gas. I think it's gonna throw tear gas one more time. Despite all the tear gas canisters, Palestinian protesters continue to protest and are still very, very close to the fence, participating in the Great March of Return. And this is not the first time they have been facing this violence and this excessive force, but they have been witnessing this for more than 18 weeks now. Most of the injuries today have been injured in the upper part of the body, where most of them are in the chest, in the stomach, in the head. The Palestinian Minister of Health stated that most of the injuries today are from live ammunition. This is a protest that was killed in his chest, and people are saying that he's shot, killed. It's very dangerous for us to be here, but despite everything, we're still here covering all the Israeli violence against the Palestinians.
Well, the Israeli military has defended its use of live ammunition, saying soldiers acted within the rules of engagement to defend the border. Thousands of Palestinians have been rallying on the Gaza-Israel border every Friday for the past 4 months, demanding the right to reclaim ancestral lands. Facebook is accused of censoring right-wing content in Brazil. More on that story after the break.
4 men are sitting in a car when the 5th gets shot in the head. All 4 have different versions of what happened. One of them is on the death row.
There's no way he could have done it. There's no possible way, because bullets do not shoot around a corner.
I've been saying the numbers mean something. They matter. The U.S. is over $20 trillion in debt. More than 10 white-collar crimes happen each day. 85% of global wealth belongs to the ultra-rich, 8.6%. Markets saw a 30% rise last year, some with 400 to 500 trades per second. And Bitcoin rose to $20,000. China's building a $2.1 billion AI industrial park. But don't let the numbers overwhelm you. The only number you need to remember is one. One business show you can't afford to miss. The one and only Boom Bust.
What politicians do is something we don't do. They put themselves on the line, and they get accepted or rejected. So when you want to be president, why would you want to be? Why would someone want to be president? What's it like to be president? What's it like when the phone rings at 3 in the morning? Can't be a good call. I'm interested always in the whys and the hows.
And cue Larry.
Question more.
Welcome back. Facebook has blocked the accounts of hundreds of right-wing activists in Brazil as part of their campaign to tackle fake news. The move caused outrage, with many claiming Facebook is interfering in the country's upcoming presidential elections. The head of the right-wing Free Brazil movement says the tech giant's decision to block the accounts was a surprise. Here's how Facebook justified its action.
These pages and profiles were part of a coordinated network concealed by the use of fake accounts on Facebook, which hid from people the nature and origin of their content for the purpose of generating division and spreading misinformation.
Our personal Facebook account was shut down, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Then suddenly I start to receive phone callings from another friends who are also part of the movement, and suddenly we also realized that many profiles, personal profiles from other leaders from our group were shut down. And then we realized first, even before the Facebook give us an answer, we realized that there was a Reuters journalism paper writing that we were banned from Facebook because we have a network of around 300 Facebook pages and profiles spreading fake news. And we are like, we don't spread any fake news. What the hell they're talking about?
Well, Brazil's federal prosecutor has called on Facebook to explain the blocking of the profiles. He's demanded a list of all the blocked pages and profiles, as well as a factual justification for each decision. Free Brazil movement co-founder Renan Santos again says the deleted pages were influential enough to attract Facebook's attention.
It was, in the last 3 years, the most influential political page on Brazilian Facebook. And it's also one of the most influential political pages in the world, actually. Our numbers of engagement used to be compared to Donald Trump, used to be bigger than Hillary Clinton. And we did a lot of transformation in our country because of our job, because of our network, because we fought the mainstream media. Basically, they knew that they couldn't win the public debate against us, so they decided to shut our mouth, to make us quiet. And that's what they're doing. They start to, first of all, putting down our reach on Facebook. We used to reach 8 million people, 9 million people daily only on our Facebook page, and now we reach 1.5, 2 million people. And they are doing this because of Brazilian elections, and also because international elections. Somehow they're trying to show the American elections that they are doing their homework, using Brazil as an experiment.
Tunisia has released a suspected Islamic terrorist who was deported from Germany 2 weeks ago. A judge cited a lack of evidence. Sami Aidoudi grew up in Tunisia and moved to Germany in 1997. In 2000, he spent several months in Afghanistan and allegedly served as Osama bin Laden's bodyguard. Back in Germany, he applied for asylum in 2006, but his bid was rejected, and it took 12 years until he was deported. Well, the case was the subject of fierce debate in Germany. Politicians argued over whether terror suspects should be sent to countries where they could face torture.
What fate awaits Sami A in Tunisia is not the problem of German taxpayers. To protect and financially equip an Islamist while less and less remains for our own people is not acceptable, but it suits Chancellor Angela Merkel's vision for Germany.
He is allegedly a hate preacher. He has al-Qaeda training and is said to have been the bodyguard of bin Laden. Anyone who thinks that we've done something terrible to Sami A has to weigh up how long this man has already been in the country and how long we have tolerated this security risk.
Problem is that he should not have been left in Germany for over 10 years. And secondly, that the way he was brought back to Tunisia, the way he was deported there, is scandalous. It calls into question the rule of law in Germany itself. No one wants this man in Germany, but it is grossly illegal. What happened there cannot be described as legal in any way. The court ruled, and even the government is bound by court rulings. They cannot just disregard what the court says. This man was given support payments well over €1,000 a month. And when that came out, the way the government responded in a very hasty manner, well, it speaks for itself. It's all chaos now.
A huge wildfire has killed 5 people, including 2 children, in northern California. More than 37,000 residents have fled their homes as the fire continues to spread. At least 500 buildings have been destroyed. The blaze has been raging since Monday, fanned by powerful winds creating so-called fire tornadoes. More than 48,000 acres of forest have also been destroyed. Now, tanks from 23 countries are doing battle on the outskirts of Moscow in the 6th annual tank biathlon. I'll be back with the latest headlines in just over half an hour. Meanwhile, for more on all of our stories, go to RTE.com.